So you want to start driving tanks in War Thunder, and you've decided to give the British tech tree a run. You've actually made quite a good choice. Both of the British starting tanks are interesting and engaging to play, and especially at this lowest tier are capable of some pretty bonkers results, provided you know how to drive them right. We'll be looking at the first of the British backup vehicles with a low tier rundown of the A13 Mark I cruiser. Okay, what does the A13 Mark I do well? What does it do poorly? How do you play it? How do you play against it? As the cruiser designation might suggest, it's quick. Fully upgraded, it'll do 48 kilometers an hour at top speed, which is pretty considerable at 1.0. The acceleration is good, not as good as the Soviet BT-5, and it loses a lot of its velocity in a hard turn. Use small turning adjustments more often to keep the vehicle moving at full pace. It's very important that you not get caught out going slowly out in the open. You'll see why. Secondly, it's got a good gun with some decent ammo types. The QF 2-pounder is a staple of the early British tech tree, and you're going to see a lot of it. It falls off quite a bit at higher battle ratings, but it's more than adequate at 1.0. Don't get confused by the multitude of different ammunition. The Mark IX B shot is going to be your mainstay, as it has the best penetration and similar ricochet values of all of the solid shot AP rounds. You should also consider bringing along some of the Mark I APT shells. This ammo has an explosive charge in it, which means it'll wreck more modules and kill more crew, but as a trade-off, it has a fair bit less penetration, so use it mostly against the enemy's side armor. It also has a low-speed stabilizer, as indicated by the stab light at the top of the tank status view. What does that mean? Well, it means that any bumps and shimmies the vehicle experiences will not affect the aiming of the gun, but only in the vertical plane and only at low speeds. Still, it can be a lifesaver when you slam on the brakes to react to a close target, and normally gives you just enough of an edge to get off the first shot. Finally, the tank has great gun depression at negative 15 degrees. Having this depression means you can hide in deeper, steeper defilades than most tanks, popping out and firing at the enemy without your point of aim being too high. While this is handy, the A13 is kind of a tall vehicle overall, and combined with the 1.0 map selection, I find I spend more time looking around obstacles rather than over them. Still, it's lovely to have when you need it though. The vehicle also has smoke dischargers, which you can use to mask your movements or hide from the enemy. You only get one shot and it only fires 2 grenades, but it's an uncommon feature at this battle rating. The dischargers fire forward from the right side of the turret, so the smoke can be used proactively to obscure an opponent's vision, or it can be dropped on a teammate who's repairing. Very useful. Remember that you can replenish your smoke grenades at a friendly capture point the same way you would ammunition. Just park in a safe spot on site and wait for a few moments. Okay, so a lot of excellent features, but what's it lacking? The armor on the A13 is laughably thin. 14mm on the front, 7mm on the sides. And to make it worse, it's almost all completely flat. This means that the A13 is vulnerable to heavy machine gun fire, much less a proper cannon round. Despite this, when I'm playing this tank, I feel as though I bounce far more shots than I have any right to. Don't get me wrong, you cannot rely on this armor in a head-on fight, and you will get one shot often. But if you can keep the enemy surprised and grasping for a shot on you, it may protect you sometimes, maybe. So where does success for the A13 lie? Well, it's quick and has a good gun and smoke launchers, but it's got terrible armor. This means that it's no close-range brawler, but a fast flanking vehicle. Use its speed to quickly get to advantageous positions that have lots of hard cover, buildings, boulders, etc. Once there, skin your eyes for the enemy and poke out quickly to fire, then pull back. With the high penetration of the 2-pounder, you should be able to go through the frontal armor of most of your opponents. If you can't maneuver away and get stuck in a fight, use rocks, wrecks, or your teammates as cover. If you're fighting on a hill, use the steeper parts in conjunction with your gun depression to fight where the enemy can't shoot you back. You need to hit them first, and you need to disable the gun. If you can keep this balancing act up, the A13 can scrap in a pinch, but falter even a little bit, and you're dead. Remember, you can take maybe one hit if you're lucky. If things start to get too spicy, pop your smoke and skedaddle out of there, using your speed to get on the new flank. If you can continue doing this while avoiding getting flanked yourself or taking head-on fights, you should be able to rack up an impressive number of kills. Well, let's say the A13 has been giving you a hard time in your 1.0 games. How do you deal with it? Well, firstly, you don't have to worry about weak spots. The whole vehicle is a weak spot. If you do have time to be choosy with a front-on shot, I would suggest putting it here, just to the right side of the driver's viewport. This will normally kill the driver and gunner together, completely disabling the vehicle. You might also get the commander in well for a one-shot. If you need to hit an A13 on the move side on, you want to aim at the rear half of the vehicle, above the track, and just behind the turret. The engine for the A13 is enormous, and the transmission is located in the rear as well. This is going to immobilize the tank, giving you the freedom for a second shot in the side of the turret. The A13 is especially vulnerable to vehicles with heavy machine guns or automatic cannons, like the M8 HMC, Panzer IIC, or AB41. Use these vehicles' high rate of fire to hose down the A13, either close or at distance. It cannot take it. A quick flanker with a good gun, smoke, and paper armor. What's the A13's low-tier rundown rating? It's an A. It can be clobbered very quickly, and that will certainly happen, but when played right, it has vastly more potential than most vehicles at 1.0, and is generally a lot of fun to play. That's all for this one. Next up, the second of the British backups, the Tetrarch.